Let Me Tell You a Story is a product of Carolina Storyteller, starring Jonathan Phoenix, written, produced, and directed by Jonathan Phoenix, edited and recorded by Jonathan Phoenix, and horribly marketed by Jonathan Phoenix. Man, I gotta hire a staff. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/Carolina Storyteller and subscribe to get exclusive content and all kinds of other neat stuff. We even have merchandise coming. Anyway, sit back and enjoy the show. Welcome back to the show, folks. I am Jonathan Phoenix, the Carolina Storyteller, and I'm back this week with a, I don't know what to call it. It's a continuation of a previous story, I guess. I did a story a few weeks back, a couple of months back, The Woman in White. Ghost Hitchhiker type of story, kind of spooky, but it's a special phenomenon. She's not really a ghost hitchhiker. And of course, immediately after doing it, someone went, "Are you going to do the Ghost Hitchhiker?" And I'm like, yeah, but I was saving that one. Because I was saving that one. I was saving that one for the Halloween month. Close to the end of the season, everything's winding down, and there is nothing better than a phenomenon that is so ancient. Understand that ghost hitchhikers, in their many categories, have been around since the Old Testament. There are stories of ghost hitchhikers in the Bible, people. Now whether you believe the Bible or not, whether you're Christian or not, whether you're Jewish, because the Jewish people basically read the Old Testament, whether you have any connection to the religion, you have to understand how long ago that was, that this stories have been around for that long. That's how long hitchhikers have been haunting the roads, not just here in America, but worldwide. All across the world, people have been hitching rides, climbing into vehicles with others, traveling with us, telling us things, asking them to take them places. And then when we get there, they're gone. Let me tell you a story. So the first version of the legend I want to cover is the most ancient. And this is that a merchant traveling along the road finds an old crone walking along in the middle of nowhere. And being kind, he offers this old crone a ride, carrying her to the next town, several miles away. And as they ride, the old crone begins to kind of speak prophecies, predicting this great tragedy that is about to befall the town, and warning him that perhaps he doesn't want to go there just yet. Perhaps he needs to make a detour. And somewhere along the way, she asks that the driver stop and let her off, that she has reached her destination. Now, he lets her off and starts to continue on his way, but when he looks back, the old woman is gone, nowhere to be seen. Now, this amongst itself would be scary, but what's even scarier is that he stops and delays himself trying to figure out what happened, and when he does finally arrive at the town, the very thing that the old crone warned him about has happened. There has been some massive tragedy or some vicious attack or something burned down or it was a natural disaster, and he arrives to utter chaos, but also carrying the very needed things that the people need right now to basically save the day. And now this is the prophetic hitchhiker. And the prophetic hitchhiker, of course, is the very one that we find in the Old Testament and that we find in some of the older ones, but we still hear about this hitchhiker today. People will be on the roads and they will talk about how they picked up some little old lady driving down the road, and as they were driving, the little old lady was just talking really weird, talking about something, and then when he lets the little old lady out, sure enough, she disappears, but whatever it was she talked about happens. Believe it or not, people have said that they picked up the prophetic hitchhiker before events like Hurricane Katrina, before tornadoes have hit, before earthquakes happened, before Fukushima happened. Somebody said that there was a prophetic hitchhiker. These stories keep coming up. Thousands of years, the prophetic hitchhiker. But that's not the only story behind these ghost hitchhikers that's out there. Now, the second version of the ghost hitchhiker that you hear about is what I like to call the little lost lamb. This may be a male, maybe a female, depending on basically who's picking them up. But they're normally found late at night outside of establishments or, nearby the outskirts of town. And they always seem to be crying and upset. And of course, the would-be driver stops to lend a hand. They deliver a sob story about a breakup that just happened or how they've become stranded and ask simply for a ride. Now, you get in, and one of the things that they'll do is they'll tell you their sob story. They'll give you the address to take them home. Occasionally, perhaps they'll say that they are cold. It happens on more times and more than one occasion that something will be given to them. Perhaps a jacket, perhaps a handkerchief for them to wipe their eyes. Perhaps because it's raining, you loan them your umbrella before they get out of the car and walk back to their home. Whatever it is, some memento, some keepsake of the person that drove them to their destination will end up leaving the vehicle with the hitchhiker. The next day, the driver will, of course, go back perhaps to get his belongings or talk to someone and mention the person that picked up, only to find out that this person has been dead for not a short amount of time, but for quite some time. Not believing it, they go to the nearest cemetery, go to the gravestone, and what they find is not only the tombstone of the person they gave a ride to, but the item that they had given to that person to aid them in that evening, be it their jacket, be it an umbrella, a tissue, whatever you let them borrow is waiting there on top of the gravestone for you when you find them. Not the worst kind of hitchhiker, but probably not something you want to run into every night. But again, there are a lot more different types of ghostly hitchhikers out there. So let me tell you about another one. If the old crone and the lost lamb are nicer versions of the lost hitchhiker, then the one I'm going to introduce you to now should be the one you're afraid of. And that is the sadist. This hitchhiker sometimes doesn't even wait for you to pick them up. You'll be driving down the road, and maybe you'll see them on the side of the road. You'll decide not to stop. Decide it just doesn't seem safe. They just don't look right. But when you look in your rearview mirror, they're in the car. Angry. They tell you to drive and not to stop. They tell you to keep going. They sit behind you, staring daggers into you. You're afraid they may hurt you. Part of you just wants to pull the car over and get out, but you're scared. However, they got into the car. And what are they going to do to you when you try to get out of the car? This is generally where the mistake is made. You see, if you got out of the car and the car quit moving, the hitchhiker really wouldn't have any control over anything. But You keep driving, hoping that if you placate this mysterious hitchhiker who you don't remember picking up, that you'll get away. That is usually when they lead the car to some kind of sharp turn or drop off or something. They convince you to speed up, and if you don't speed up, the car starts speeding up on its own. And right before a massive wreck that will destroy the vehicle and likely kill the driver, or at least injure them severely enough that they won't be driving again anytime soon, the hitchhiker vanishes, only to be seen again standing there staring at you as you writhe in pain. These malcontents are very dangerous, and the roads that they frequent are well known. People talk about them all the time. There's even one in South Carolina. You have to be careful with these hitchhikers, because once they've decided that they've set their eyes on you, the only way to get away from them is to stop and get out of the car. Probably not the best person to pick up on your travels. But wait, there are more hitchhikers. The final ghost hitchhiker I want to mention is one that's more baffling than the rest. Now, this one appears perfectly normal and natural. You're driving down the road. It's the middle of the night. You just happen to see someone on the side of the road. Or perhaps they walk out in front of your car and you barely stop in time before hitting them. They're polite. They even apologize for it. And they state that they need a ride just in the direction you happen to be going in. As you're riding along, they tell you a story. Generally, it's a tragic story, or maybe not even a tragic story, just a tale, really. And their story that they recount involves the same road that you're on, an incident that happened. And in the end result, of course, someone passed away. And now they say every night that this person is always looking for someone or so-and-so, hoping that one day they'll be reunited in the afterlife. Now, after hearing this story, you may have a brief conversation. And then you'll say something, and you'll expect a response, but there won't be one. When you look around, your passenger, who has been with you for several miles and several minutes of a conversation, you've just talked about an event that you'd never heard about before. Your passenger is gone. They leave you only with questions and an eerie feeling that you've experienced something that you never thought would happen. And perhaps you stop somewhere up the road, and almost always there is somewhere up the road, and you ask about this person that you met in your car, and everyone will tell you, "Oh yes, that story is this person. They died on that road." We constantly hear about people who have found them. The Vanisher's not the worst hitchhiker. I mean, obviously, they're not trying to cause a wreck or anything, but they just seem to want a little bit of company for a little while. But sometimes that's all any of us want. Well, folks, there you have it. There was my quartet of spooky, ghostly hitchhikers that I wanted to share with you. These stories, of course, being 4 of the 5 primary hitchhiking ghosts that you hear about in stories from, all over the world. The 5th, of course, being the woman in white. And together they make up the majority of ghost hitchhiker stories that you'll hear. And that you may experience in your life. Now, there are a few others, some select ghost hitchhiking stories from certain areas where things couldn't be considerably worse if you happen to run into these particular spirits, or maybe better. There are some hitchhiking ghost stories where the hitchhiker doesn't even want to get in your car. They just vanish before you pull up. But they're few and far between. So remember, folks, when you're riding the highways at night and cruising along, when you see that person on the side of the road, be careful if you're going to stop. Because you never know whether you're picking up someone who's flesh and blood, or someone who gave up being flesh and blood many, many years ago. I'm Jonathan Phoenix, Carolina Storyteller. This was Let Me Tell You a Story. Remember to go to thecarolinastoryteller.com, check out the site, check out the merch, check out the guests, and go to patreon.com/Carolina Storyteller to help support the podcast. As always, remember to like, subscribe, and review. It only helps us grow. And we'll see you next time. Stay spooky, my friends.